The Hellenistic armies is the term applied to the armies of the successor kingdoms, which emerged after the death of Alexander the Great. After his death, Alexander's huge empire was torn between his successors, the Diadochi. During the Wars of the Diadochi, the Macedonian army, as developed by Alexander and Philip II, gradually adopted new units and tactics, further developing Macedonian warfare. The armies of the Diadochi bear few differences from that of Alexander, but during the era of the Epigonoi, the differences were obvious, favoring numbers over quality and weight over maneuverability. The limited availability of Greek conscripts in the East led to an increasing dependence on mercenary forces, whereas in the West, Hellenistic armies were continuously involved in wars, which soon exhausted local manpower, paving the way for Roman supremacy. The major Hellenistic states were the Seleucid Empire, Ptolemaic Egypt and the Antigonid Kingdom. Smaller states included Italid Pergamum, Pontus, Epirus, the Achaean League, the Aetolian League, Syracuse, and other states. Numerical strength. The Diadochi were capable of deploying some of the largest armies of their day, and could easily outmatch the numerical strength of either Philip II or Alexander's Macedonian full-strength contingents. However, the size of the armies participating in different campaigns could vary extremely, from a few thousand to over 70,000. Of these armies, outside Greece, only a fraction would have been of Greek origin, the rest being allied contingents and conscripts from the local population. Manpower and the state. The lack of manpower was a serious concern for many Hellenistic rulers. In fact, the disparity between the manpower reserves available to Rome and to any Hellenistic monarch had a profound influence on the way in which the opponents made war. Roman generals could more easily risk defeat in battle, while for Hellenistic generals, a defeat might cripple their manpower base for nearly a generation. Many states had to rely on mercenaries to bulk up their citizen forces. For example, the army of the Achaean League under Aratus of Sicyon was reorganized to contain a permanent corps of mercenaries that numbered 8,000 foot and 500 horse, compared with the corps of picked Achaean troops, which numbered only 3,000 foot and 500 horse. To take another example, by the mid-3rd century BC, the Spartiate citizen population had decreased to a tiny fraction of what it had been at the time of the Persian Wars. The Ingsoc reforms of Agis IV in the 240s BC had failed after a reaction by those opposed to the reforms. The problem of the lack of man-at-arms was then taken up by Cleomenes III of Sparta, who attempted to address it by his radical reforms. Cleomenes launched a coup against his rivals at home and used their demise to push forward a reform to increase Spartan manpower. In 227 BC, Cleomenes cancelled all debts, pooled and divided the larger states and increased the citizen body by enfranchising 5,000 Perioikoian metics. Before long, he increased the citizen body further by allowing helots to buy their freedom for 5 million. Therefore he acquired 500 talents, some of which he used to arm 2,000 men in the Macedonian fashion as phalangites. However, the defeat at Sellasia in 222 BC and the attendant great loss in manpower led to reliance on mercenaries, who were the basis of power for Machanidas and Nabus, his successors. The great losses affected Philip V of Macedon greatly, especially after his defeat at Cynoscephalae in 197 BC. With such a small population, and such drastic losses in battle, the Antigonid king had to think radically as to how to improve his state's performance in the next war. In between the Second and Third Macedonian Wars, Philip V embarked on a major reform and reorganization of the kingdom. Expansion could secure the great reservoir of available manpower that lay north in Thrace. Philip then transported segments of the populations of the coastal cities to the northern frontiers and moved those Thracians south. This, combined with economic and political moves, rebuilt Macedonia and allowed for Perseus, Philip's successor, to be in a stronger position. Perseus had enough grain to last the army 10 years, enough money to hire 10,000 mercenaries for 10 years, and field an army of 43,000 men. A significant improvement compared to the situation of Philip V at Cynoscephalae in 197 BC, who fielded an army of 25,500 men. The Eastern kingdoms, for example the Ptolemaic, Seleucid, Greco-Bactrian and Indo-Greek kingdoms, had an even more problematic situation. The basis of their militaries relied on Macedonians and Greeks, which were obviously not common to the areas that they ruled over. In order to overcome this, these kingdoms set up military colonies, known as klerochoi, to settle mercenaries and others from Macedon and Greece. The system would allow for the colonists to be given a plot of land and in return they would provide military service when needed. In Ptolemaic Egypt, for example, soldiers and officers were given lots, in exchange for military service, whenever needed. W.W. Tarn even suggests that the Greek population in India may not have been as small as one would suppose, stating, "There may well have been many more Yavanas than we should suppose. We may have to reckon with a considerable number of men, adventurers or mercenaries from the west."